was covered in a red, fox-shaped shroud of chakra complete with two tails as his features roughened. Oops. Naruto said in a deadpan voice, "Oh, would you look at that? My Biju is showing. Sorry about that." From the complete look of shock and astonishment on Shizuka's face, he felt that his spur-of-the-moment gambit had worked.
Almost out.
It had worked well enough that he didn't have to go ahead and flatten her to win the battle at least, which was what he wanted. Nearby, Shikamaru looked on and nodded in silent approval. He couldn't have picked a lazier way to stop a fight himself, short of just giving up, of course. But since Naruto never surrendered, this was as shrewd a move as he could have made. Especially when he immediately took his opening to hightail it on out of there back to the court, with Shikamaru finding it prudent to follow. He'd finished his lunch after all. Let it be known that Uzumaki Naruto did not run away, he strategically retreated. He was also going to strategically avoid that woman for as long as possible to avoid another no-win scenario if this didn't get rid of her for good. He was also going to strategically kick Jiraiya in his scrotum when he saw him again for leaving him to this with little to no warning. And once Naruto was gone, both Sadeo and Kenta found no reason to hang around, as one of the causes of the in-town disturbance had just left. It would probably be quite some time before Naruto returned to the city after this little episode. The functional mute Kenta nudged the smaller Sadeo with his elbow, getting a nod from the blind young man who spoke for him. "You're right, Kenta. There's no more issue here.
No place to put that.
You guys enjoy the rest of your stay in the capital, stay out of trouble, and have a safe trip home." Even when the last two guardians on the scene departed, the leader of the Natsuhiko village couldn't help but stare at the place that Naruto had been standing at minutes ago.
Luckily for them, I identify it as black, so
to get her attention, she still didn't look
well,
away.
if I can identify as whatever I want.
Shizuka said after having recovered enough to speak. He referred to the Biju, which would make him a desh dog. Jinchuriki. Takiwa said, finishing her sentence for her. Yes, exactly. To think that Jiraiya would have trained one of them as his own student. She trailed off and thought at the prospect of a Biju container being the student of one of the most powerful men to ever come from Konoha. All Shizuka did was continue to stare. Can I defeat him? He'd kept her at bay the entire time without using a single offensive attack and looked more annoyed than threatened by anything that she did. Or am I just putting off my own responsibility? The battle technically never ended. Shizuka never struck Naruto, nor did he strike her with anything on his end, so there was no real victory. Either way, she wasn't leaving yet until she got a definite fight out of Naruto that would end one way or another. And if she lost, she would then not be thinking about someone so definitively stronger than her, no matter how long it took. After Chapter 55, Pickup or Delivery. In the mansion of the Hokage, Hiruzen was getting a late-night bi-weekly briefing from Yamato as to the current progression of the manhunt for their pesky spy. It had been nearly a week since the entire operation had begun, and working a domestic procedure like this never left good feelings. But it was necessary. Security of the village was paramount, and no amount of scrutiny was too much in order to bring this image to light. Yamato had no real use for his Hokage, much to the chagrin of the former. The only run-in worth mentioning with any of the groups I have under my command happens to be the one that occurred with the team led by my guy. Yamato reported in the moonlight of the window while Hiruzen read documents by lamp in a comfortable lounge chair. They discovered the entrance to a root tunnel on the grounds of the former Ushima district, the bad cop of investigating it. If they had done so, they would have instigated a confrontation. Hiruzen let out a sigh at that. Of course he knew that Danzo had not fully disbanded Root the way he had commanded almost a decade ago, but they were a formidable force and Danzo's way of doing things had many supporters in the village. Directly forcing them could result in civil war or some sort of social unrest. The man was no fool and would know how to play the cards presented to him. Still, the audacity to set up a secret tunnel on the lands of the clan that he had directly orchestrated the extermination of. Let the dead lie still, for goodness sake. Yamato. Hiruzen said, getting his subordinate's attention. I want every ninja over the rank of Chunin prepared for anything in the coming days. I'll be informing Shikaku in the morning to put the watch teams on invasion alert, but keep their focus pointed inward. Make sure they all know to remember to keep this quiet from the Genin being taught in squads. Of course. For Genin things were neat to know. For something like this they most certainly did not need to know anything. They would be more likely to get in the way and get themselves hurt or killed than help out. I can get word to the teams watching the limits of the village to do this already before I retire in the night. Yamato offered, getting a grateful smile from him in return. Do you need anything else from me, Hokage-sama? Only the continued current effort that you are giving your assignment. The wizened old man said before Yamato seemed to just about disappear from his mansion office. Between the spies seemingly reporting on every major move Konoha had tried to make for the last 3 years plus and Danzo trying to undermine him from the shadows, there was no shortage of trouble on the home front for him to juggle. It was a welcome comfort that he had such a loyal force of ninjas that would work for Konoha. Elsewhere in Konoha, Ninja Academy, Administrative Division. The halls of the academy were vacant at such a late time of the night, all with the exception of one elderly man covered in bandages and holding a key. Walking into one of the great meeting halls for the real minor UPS of the village, Danzo went inside and stopped once he reached the middle of the room. He didn't even bother turning around to face the person he knew was there at the door. Yes, Jiraiya? Is there any reason you are interrupting my quiet reflection time? Standing at the open double doors was Jiraiya with a very serious expression on his face. His first instinct was to make a joke about Danzo's quiet reflection time, but now was not the time or the place. What the hell do you think you've been doing for all of these years? He asked with a very restrained tone, building secret paths on private property in the village? Maintaining your own standing private army? What's the point?
Maybe we should go around and wipe it out.
This village safe and strong. Danzo said,
In your vision.
His voice were rising to the fact that Jiraiya had cornered him for this discussion. Every place needs its roots after all. Safe and strong. Jiraiya replied, how is outright...
Just depends what kind of roots we've got. Some roots can poison the tree. And we have to get rid of that poison.
Danzo said, turning around with his single eye of Jiraiya's form. I'm trying to advise him with but in all of that time he's only heeded my advice on what course to actually take once. Just once. And if he hadn't taken my direction, this village would have seen a civil war. But I wouldn't expect you to know about it with you being out and about, wasting years pursuing your traitorous teammate. Jiraiya's fist shot out and punched the door frame hard enough to break it and buzzed a metal hinge on the door, leaving it leaning, and I'd do it again. You think I wanted to do what I did? I have a godson here. But the same teammate is holding a blade over this village's head as we speak. He gestured out of the door through the windows lining the wall of the hallway outside. I don't know if you've noticed, but this piece that we've spent the last 10 years trying to savor is slowly rotting into my enamel. You call it peace. Danzo seemed to wish to spit at the thought of considering Konoha currently safe. What I see are enemies at the gate, and enemies amongst us. And as all of this is happening, I feel that I am the only man fighting the tide. You've been out there. You've seen it firsthand. But you clearly choose to ignore all of it. And you want to go to war with all of it.
No place to put that.
Jiraiya, you know full well the only path to actual peace. Danzo continued to try and reason. Even a man with all the power needed to achieve anything, such as Senju Hashirama, tried things your way when he had enough power to keep and hand the Biju over to the other villages. Had he merely finished things with the upstart villages of the past, there would be no 4 other great villages. We really would all be one. And that's why as long as I'm around I can never let you be Hokage. Jiraiya said with a shake of his head, you would start a war with everyone in the elemental nations just to put yourself at the top, because you think you have all of the answers. Danzo said, walking past Jiraiya to leave the room, not even finding...
So you did see that route too. That's interesting, because they're all dead. You see, an unidentified force that didn't identify themselves properly was killed. And we know it was your units. So let's say this. If that unit dies under any circumstance, or happenstance, route will be wiped off.
Your day just got a little
completely.
Himself
With you being the first
Jiraiya
to
looking
die.
back. At least I'm the one trying to come up with an answer based in reality. Instead of you waiting on them. Child of prophecy, as you called it. How did that wind up working out? The very last thing Jiraiya needed to be reminded of in life was the results of his past adhering to the prophecy of the most elder of his summoned creatures. 2 students of his fell prey were told decades ago, and that just so happened to be his button of swords. Because he reached out and grabbed Danzo by the throat from behind his, he literally just strangled the old man. You've got the balls to say something like that about a man that saved this village in your worthless life at the cost of his own, of his wife's, and of their own child's freedom. Jiraiya said, refraining from lifting Danzo up. The only indication that Danzo had choking was the strange sound of breath leaving him. His face didn't change, and his body didn't move to free himself. He could start and win 1,000 wars, and he won't be half the hero that Alpha was. With that, Jiraiya let go of his neck and walked past him first before the old man could black out, and Danzo took in deep breaths there to keep himself on his feet as his rival's top loyal student left the room, stopping at the door that he'd originally broken to look back at him with a massive grin on his face. See, that's why I can't be Hokage. Jiraiya said, tone belying the bloodlust that was fully radiating from him at that very moment. You see, Sensei wouldn't have tried to strangle you. He wouldn't have thought of trying to snap your brittle neck like a tree. He let out a laugh without an ounce of humor in it. The only thing that kept me from doing it right here, right now, was thinking of what that would do to Sensei himself. Now was not the time for people to get the idea that Sensei had sent Jiraiya to take out his cheap competition for the continued seat of Hokage under the guise of the spy mess, which was what it would be construed to look like once they entered the detail.
You're this close to dying next to us. And it wouldn't be the Hokage that ordered it. It would be me. Because we know you think you're the best, that you can run this place. No, I don't think so.
You wouldn't be surprised if Danzo had people watching over him just for that very reason. He actually was surprised that they hadn't attacked him when he'd gotten a hold of his neck. Danzo just glared at Jiraiya through his single visible eye before the man left the building altogether. He could still feel Jiraiya's grip around his neck, but he knew that the fool wouldn't kill him. He was too deeply seated into Konoha's hierarchy to go missing. His death at a time like this would basically martyr him in regards to the message of how endangered Konoha was without his policies being featured. I will do what's right for this village over here. His last argument students are against my methods or not. Speaking of his policies, the patterns that the spy happened to be using to cover his tracks seemed somewhat familiar. But that wasn't possible. Clearing his own throat, Danzo
where did you go?
To catch this spy, he was the only one in Konoha that afforded to get the job done at all costs. The clandestine leader of Group left the halls of the administrative building, and his hidden shadows followed him, keeping a watchful eye on their leader. But as they left the vacant corridors, they noticed the shine of the moonlight off of Hiroshima figure's circular glasses as his body stepped up from underneath the floor, a confident smile on his face. Nice to see you again, Danzo. We'll have to catch up again some other time. Right now he had to put the finishing touches on his grand old exfiltration of Konohagaku. Further this time. You created this monster, Danzo. Countryside of Hinoki. Forests around the outskirts of Okubai's Ichimaku. So the Mary had to face the gigantic Himeji kid in t-shirts with that pink-haired girl that had made her and Cancun look stupid one time each. That was fine with her. The fact of the matter remained, no matter how big you are, you can still be cut by my jutsu. Decay no jutsu, Great Sickle Weasel Jutsu. With a swing of her fan, she manipulated the latent currents in the air to a razor-sharp degree and set them the way Chichi propelled him like a dream. Sakura gasped and jumped off of Chichi's shoulder as he shrugged and tries to make himself more difficult to move. It kept him moving like a for the time being, if nothing else. Landing in a big reloading. To blow them away as if it were a child. Of course the whole thing worked, but she had to test how attentive she was nonetheless. Sure, she'd remember how Sakura won a battle years ago with a special genjutsu that required a visual medium as a trigger. This was a more practical idea that wanted to sucker her into one of her most painful illusions. It was her favorite finish, but it wasn't to be on this occasion. You couldn't have possibly thought that something like that would work. Tamiri said, directing her attention Sakura's way with a smirk. As this occurred, the sound of clicking and chattering could steadily be heard getting closer until Karasu launched itself from the forest at Sakura again. Took you long enough, Kankuro. The Suna puppeteer was not in the mood for any snippy remarks from his older sister at the moment as he threw his voice from wherever he was hiding. I got covered in human piss by that goddamn Inuzuka kid. Well, he left, so help me deal with these ones and maybe we can catch up to him or follow him back to the rest of the Konoha ninjas. Tamari insisted, preparing to have her fan for another grand swing. Gaara should be done with their teammate any second now. Right. Definitely don't want to keep him waiting, even if he is more patient. Sakura and Chuji moved nearer to each other again, keeping an eye on Tamari and Kankuro's puppet while trying to find where the man himself was. My bag's on the kunai didn't break. She expected Tamari's attack to cut them open, which would have set her up for a rather devastating jutsu, but she completely turned off the cutting power of her wind jutsu, too straightforward. The pink-haired Kunoichi asked rhetorically. I think she's just really attentive. Chuji said instead of outright agreeing, long-range fighters usually are. Which meant that Sakura was going to have a harder time sinking in a genjutsu since both Tamari and Kankuro knew what she was capable of. That severely limited their options since Chuji was strictly close range in his abilities, and Tamari was not about to let them get close enough to make that work. Chuji, Sakura said, mind turning quickly to try and come up with a solution. It wasn't a complicated look underneath Shikamaru's special, but it was something she had plenty of faith in to request. Use the multi-size jutsu then for me and dash. She trailed off to quietly whisper the rest of her idea to him. It was good enough to get his eyes to go wide and get a firm nod from him that this was the move to make. Baikya no jutsu, multi-size jutsu. Once again, Choji's mass expanded to that of a giant, though still smaller than the first time he made use of the jutsu in the ongoing battle, completely demanding attention as his body grew to unreal proportions. Tamari, however, was not impressed. This again. I can still cut you up from here no matter how big you are, and none of that will stop Kankuro from poisoning you. She was about to show his first game with her next move until something terrifying happened. She saw Choji holding in place his hands together in the form of a handsome and she knew from doing battle that the most prolific user of the jutsu was affiliated with the attack. Choji's hands were stuck in the position of calling upon the Kakya technique. And right before her eyes, 7 Jins, all as tall as trees, 4 times the girth surrounded the clearing, all glaring inward at her in carousel. Did everyone in Konoha know how to use the goddamn technique like that? As far as she knew from the fact that her village had a few people that could use the jutsu as well, even making one was extremely dangerous due to it carving up your chakra evenly between each clone. But here were 6 clones, splitting the Akimichi's chakra 7 ways. Kankuro. Tamari shouted as she saw all of them with their glowing blue heads with strange markings on them. She couldn't target them all. She couldn't do anything about the ones at her backside, and she couldn't dodge what that would do to the ground around her even if she could avoid the crushing assault themselves. Got it, just hold on. Kankuro cried out, willing her to simply wait on him while he did something. Even if she couldn't attack them all, he could. Kurohiki, Rakasora, Black Secret Technique, Falling Skies. The sound of something large being launched into the air gave way to a very large container of some sort flying up into the night sky. Once it reached a high enough altitude, it exploded. Tamari immediately swapped her fan up, because she knew what was happening and that she had to protect herself. If she hadn't right when the pod exploded, she would have been impaled by a spike half her size in less than a second. The entire open area of the battlefield was covered in large spikes close to the ground. The trees, it was all a gigantic string of spikes littering the area. The only clear place was around Tamari, since she had protected herself with powerful winds to keep the spikes from killing her. The thing about it was though, that there were no dead judges around either. There hadn't been any puffs of smoke, nor was there a gigantic, dead, original anywhere around her. What the hell? Those big, fat, slow bastards couldn't dodge that. Once that pod exploded it was instantaneous. The only reason she was able to do anything about it when she did was because she knew what was coming and how fast she needed to be to save herself. And then it hit her. Little pink-haired genjutsu bitch. The only saving grace of being caught hook, line, and sinker in the trap was that genjutsu affected the brain, which got to work much quicker than things happened on the outside. Cancellation of the genjutsu revealed that while it was around 12 seconds while subjected to the OG, it had been closer to 3 seconds in real time. 3 seconds where she couldn't notice or react to anything that her enemies were doing. And if it took her that much time to break it herself, how long was it taking Kankuro? The reason being, that he really needed to make sure that it had been broken by now. Nakudamari Sensho, spiked human bullet tank. A gigantic, rolling ball comprised of Chuji's body covered in his own overgrown, spiky hair tore through the stumps and spikes littering the area before he barreled straight into the forest in the direction he saw Kankuro shoot his jutsu off into the air from. Trees were not an obstacle for this sphere of devastation. He rolled over any tree fool enough to not sprout legs and run away, and cut the trunks to pulp underneath his hair that served as deadly treads for his locomotion. Kankuro. Tamari shouted at her brother, hoping that her voice could break through what influenced Sakura's genjutsu might or might not. Speaking of which, a sharp movement from near her blind spot caught Tamari's attention and she turned, opening her iron fan to block the stare with a kunai that was directly right at her liver. How did you do that? I can't give away all of my tricks, even to an ally of Zeke. Sakura said as Tamari pulled her fan up. She jumped back enough to sit up for another minute, but she wasn't going to let her swing that fan to cause any wind to fly and kill her. I might not be the best in taijutsu, but if she has to carry that big thing she's got to be centered around backing off and using it from a distance. It was difficult to deal with though. Fully open, Tamari's fan easily kept her entire body out of Sakura's view. She wasn't going to be stabbing anyone behind that thing. And Tamari could always move it right in front of her dexterously to keep her at bay. If only it was Chuji taking her on up close instead, he'd have just slapped her aside and been done with it.
I copy.
Sakura wasn't that strong. She didn't have any ninjutsu in her repertoire that could bolster her close-range capabilities. Tamari chortled at Sakura's failed attempts to harm her. You think I'd carry something this big if I didn't know how to handle it in a situation like this? Proceeded to swing it like a bat at the unprepared Sakura, barely covered up to defend from being struck. Grow up. Sakura's body slammed off of one of the tree trunks that Tamari had previously cut down, losing the kunai that bounced out of her grip in a way upon impact. She cringed and held the back of her head where it hit, steadying her vision on the fan-wielding maiden of the desert. Damn it. I've been doing nothing but keeping her on her heels all fight long and I can't secure anything to win with. It wasn't fair. She'd been doing everything right. She had her in